Hello everyone and welcome to the Blockchain Foundation program. Today is the fifth cohort's introductory session. Welcoming you all to this introductory session on blockchain for the Blockchain Foundation program. Myself, Nikhil V. Chandran, Research Engineer at Kerala Blockchain Academy. Just a brief introduction about KBA. KBA is an initiative of the Government of Kerala under Digital University of Kerala, previously IITMK, for offering blockchain training programs and research and development activities. So we have various areas in which we work, like the Powerhouse, the Garage Research Group, and Innovation Clubs. About the BFP course, this is a free online self-paced learning course where you can access the content for free, covering the blockchain fundamental concepts. You will have 1 month free access to the course content. Totally, there will be 4 quizzes and you will have 2 attempts to finish the quiz. So for each quiz, for each week of course content, you will have a quiz and you will have 4 weeks of content and 4 quizzes. So you will have 2 attempts for each quiz to complete it with minimum of 60% mark that is required. That's a minimum requirement to progress to the next quiz. So you can post queries on the discussion board and you can answer among yourself, or we will answer it for you. The cohort ends on December 1st at 3 p.m. IST. The digital certificate will be issued on the blockchain after the course completion. So you will get the certificate if you pass all the quizzes with minimum 60% mark. After December 31st, you will receive the digital certificate to your mail. Now, the course content overview. What are the different contents that we have in this free course? So you have free access to all this week all the week's content. So you can access week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4 content from the first day onwards. And the quiz is like you have to progress. You get minimum 60% mark and pass the first quiz to get access to the next quiz. So it is like a prerequisite for quiz 2 is quiz 1 with minimum 60% mark. So finally, when you complete all the quiz, you will get certified as mentioned in the previous slide. Now, in week 1, we will be covering the introduction to blockchain. What is a blockchain, the working of blockchain, and the history of evolution of blockchain. So that means we will cover the basic introduction to blockchain, or how a blockchain works. What is the need for blockchain, the history, and what's the philosophy of blockchain. That is covered in the week 1 content. Next, the blockchain story, or how the currency came about and the need for decentralization is also discussed in week 1. In the week 2, you will have access to content about Bitcoin, how Bitcoin works, what is Bitcoin, the applications of Bitcoin, and so on. So that will cover the basics of Bitcoin, of the first blockchain known as Bitcoin. Next, we will have the consensus mechanisms on blockchain, like the proof of work, proof of stake, practical Byzantine fault tolerance, and some other consensus mechanisms that are used in blockchain. So these are the first and second week's content. Next, we have week 3 content, that is the introduction to Ethereum and Hyperledger. So Ethereum is a public blockchain, and there is something known as Ethereum World Computer. So we'll be discussing the concepts regarding Ethereum World Computer, regarding smart contracts and decentralized applications. Next, we will cover the important aspects regarding Hyperledger, or the permission version of blockchain, or the distributed ledger concept of Hyperledger. And we'll be discussing Hyperledger Fabric and Hyperledger projects and tools. In the 4th week, we will be covering blockchain use cases in banking, supply chain, healthcare, and government. And finally, we will end with the future of blockchain, with the current trends in blockchain and challenges that are faced by the current blockchain technology. So this course gives you an overview of all the content regarding blockchain for a basic beginner level understanding of blockchain. But if you want to learn more about blockchain in a bit more detail for understanding the basic concepts, then you can go for another course known as Certified Blockchain Associate Program offered by Kerala Blockchain Academy. So if you complete this course with minimum 60% mark, you will have a chance to get 50% off for the self-paced program for the Certified Blockchain Associate program, and you can apply for that program after with the certification of the Blockchain Foundation program and get 50% off for that Certified Blockchain Associate program. Also, we have another program known as Ethereum Fundamentals program, that is for Ethereum Fundamentals, and soon we'll be launching Hyperledger Fabric Fundamentals program. Now, we will be having a brief introduction to blockchain in this session. So we'll be covering just the tip of the blockchain concepts, not much in detail, just the basic concepts regarding blockchain. Before coming to what blockchain is, let us discuss some of the earlier versions of currencies. So there were initially barter systems, so where one type of commodity, like some one good was exchanged for another good. So this was a fair and straightforward way to perform an exchange between two entities, but the problem was that there was no fixed standard price, there was no standardization of the prices. The next came something like the rarity of items gave about the next kind of coins, like the cowrie shells. So these are the shells that are used in an island, and there the further the place where the cowrie shell was found, the higher the price it carried. So this was much less standardized, but still it was used or an efficient way rather than the barter system. Then came about the metal, or which are minted or into shapes, like which are very bulky and very hard to carry, like silver or any copper kind of metals that are used and traded as currency. So metals were formed into shapes, like into rounded shapes or other shapes and so on. And another concept is the concept of the coins that are forming the gold. So precious and very rare gold, rare metals like gold were very difficult to counterfeit. So these were used as currencies till the previous century, and it's still considered as a valuable form of currency these days. And finally, we come to the current scenario where we have the banking system or the banks which are used as currencies. So these are the brief history of how the evolution of currency or the history of different kinds of currency took place. And now we are moving towards something known as digital currencies. So that is where blockchain came in, or there was something known as the 2008 financial crisis, and at that financial crisis time, people were having very less confidence in the blockchain or in the banking system, and hence a new kind of payment system was introduced, and this payment system was known as the Bitcoin. So in 2008, this document was published online called Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system by an unknown identity. So we don't know the identity of who actually published this document or who actually launched this document. So this document was launched in late 2008, and in 2009 this person launched an alternative to the current financial system known as the Bitcoin. So Satoshi Nakamoto was the name of the pseudonym of the person who created this first currency of blockchain known as the Bitcoin. Next, slowly people started learning about this currency, that new financial kind of system, and people started trading or exchanging this currency for some value. So in 2010, the first real transaction of buying 2 pizzas for 10,000 BTCs was done. So the fun fact is that the current rate of 10,000 BTC is much higher. It is having a high value these days. So you can calculate how much 10,000 BTC is. And by the end of 2019, Bitcoin consumes a lot of electricity that electricity consumption is comparable to the consumption of electricity by certain countries. So that is what emerged out of this financial crisis and then led to the creation of this new kind of system. So what is the difference between the Bitcoin blockchain, the Bitcoin currency, and the ledger? So we can say the Bitcoin with the capital B is a protocol for decentralized peer-to-peer networks that creates a consensus without needing a centralized authority to provide the trust. The Bitcoin currency with a small t is a token that is issued as a reward in the proof of work mining process. The Bitcoin blockchain is a public ledger where the network records the transactions are written. So what's the difference between a fiat currency like a dollar or a rupee and a cryptocurrency like a Bitcoin? So in case of a fiat currency like a dollar, the transaction may or may not be recorded. But in case of Bitcoin, the transactions are always recorded in a ledger. The fiat currency like a dollar is backed by a central authority, but in case of Bitcoin, there is no central authority backing the Bitcoin. It runs in a decentralized manner. The fiat currency like a dollar is a legal tender, so we can buy products by exchanging this by exchanging this fiat currency like a dollar. But Bitcoin is not yet a legal tender in most of the countries. It is classified more like an asset. There is no supply cap for a fiat currency like a dollar or rupee, so you can create or mint or create more and more currency like a dollar or a rupee, but the Bitcoin has a supply cap, so there is a limited supply for a Bitcoin. So that is the main difference between the dollar and a cryptocurrency, or fiat currency and a cryptocurrency. So the supply cap of Bitcoin is around 21 million Bitcoin. So that will be mined around the year 2140. Now coming to the concept of a blockchain. So what is a blockchain? It is something which is public and which is have a decentralized store of value. It can be thought about like an open ledger. So ledger is anything that holds some records, some storage of value. So it can be documents, money, valuables, votes, etc. So it can be anything. So this is stored, this storage of value or this storage is done in a public ledger where anyone can view the records. So it is similar to an online newspaper, not exactly an online newspaper that is controlled by a central authority, but a decentralized kind of online newspaper. Anyone can view the transactions, anyone can take part in that public and decentralized blockchain, and anyone can verify or validate that the validity of that particular information that is stored. Anyone can view that transaction, and it has the same, it maintains the same copy over the entire ledger. So all the nodes in the network, they will have the same copy of this ledger. It is distributed and decentralized. Means the nodes are distributed across the world, and it is decentralized, means there is no single server that is controlling this entire process. The nodes maintain themselves by means of some mechanisms known as consensus mechanisms. It is a peer-to-peer network, means the connection between the node is peer-to-peer or direct connections, and it's known as a future internet. These kinds of networks or blockchain networks are hard to tamper because they have to edit and delete at each copy, which is practically impossible. And this blockchain is unlike storing in a single database or like storing inside a single book, it is distributed and decentralized across many parties over the internet. So this blockchain is an immutable global book for trusted transactions. So the name blockchain comes from the fact that we have at the smallest unit, we have individual transactions, and all these transactions are grouped together into a block. So these blocks represents a group of transactions. These blocks of transactions are then chained by means of cryptographic linkages. So blocks of transactions which are linked or chained by cryptographic linkages are known as blockchains. So it mimics a kind of a linked list kind of structure where the second block is connected to the first block and third block is connected to the second block by a cryptographic linkage, and the last block is connected to the second last block by a cryptographic linkage. So that maintains that chain of blocks. So this is known as a blockchain, which is stored in each and every node in a public kind of blockchain network. So we can break it down in terms, in individual terms, like the pages of a book. It represents the individual transactions that takes place in the network. The books themselves, they form the blocks in the blockchain, and we can imagine different participants in the network or nodes in the network keeping the same copy of the books. So this represents one copy of the book that represents one block of the in the blockchain. So again, another if imagine these people holding on to a series of books in a sequential manner, that will form the blockchain, like here that is shown in this figure. So that forms the blockchain where everyone keeps the same copy of transactions. So individual pages form the transactions. They are grouped together to a block of transaction, which can be imagined to be a book. Then everyone keeps a copy of the book, and this multiple books are kept in a sequential order, in a particular order, and that maintains that particular order of transaction execution in a blockchain. Now let us see the working of a blockchain, or this is what most of you are confused. How a blockchain works. So at the user level, we can imagine someone initiating a transaction. So maybe a person like a Bob, he might be initiating a transaction through a wallet. It can be directly through a console or directly as a node. Bob can be a node, but let us imagine Bob is outside the outside the blockchain network, and Bob is transacting via a wallet. So Bob will send some cryptocurrencies to Alice. Now that transaction is initiated via this wallet. It will have the from address, the to address, the value, and some other transaction fields like how much transaction fees are have to be given, etc. Next, this wallet will be connected to a particular node in the blockchain network. So that wallet will send that transaction to the node it is connected to. That node will receive that transaction and verify the validity. It will check for the signature, whether Bob is the actual sender and whether Bob has enough balance, whether Alice is valid, the address of Alice is valid or not, and so on. So once that is checked by the node in the network, the next step is to send the transaction from that particular node to all the other nodes in the network. So this transaction is then sent or broadcasted across the network. Next step, the nodes verify the transactions at each, they independently verify the transaction. So each and every node, they independently verify whether the transaction is valid or not. So the next step is the actual consensus process that is taking place. So nodes add the transaction to a block, and each node creates their own version of a block by adding some transaction that they received that are stored in a place known as a memory pool. So they take these transactions and they add it to a block from the transaction list, and then each node creates a block that is known as a candidate block in Bitcoin. So this candidate block is then each and every node in if you are considering a Bitcoin network, each and every node which is taking part in the consensus, known as a miner node, they start mining or solving a puzzle for electing a leader among the different nodes in the network. So one of these nodes will win the election, and the candidate block that is proposed by that particular node will be selected as the next block. So that block is then broadcasted or sent across the network. So the block that is sent across the network is a block that of the leader node, or the one which won the election in that particular point of time. Next, all the nodes in the network, they verify the block that is received from the winner node. They verify it is the valid winner node. They verify the validity of each transaction that is stored in that particular node, and then they do it independently. So once they independently verify the block, the next step is to add the block to the blockchain. So each node will independently, they will add the block to their version of blockchain, and finally, after this much process, the transaction is complete, and from Bob to Alice, the transaction has taken place. So this is how a transaction takes place in a typical blockchain network like a Bitcoin network. Now, what is some of the application of blockchain in daily life? There are a lot of applications of blockchain. So one simple example is to trace the origin of products, like traceability solutions or provenance solutions. So some of them are like tracking the origin of goods, or map every exchange between the different participants in a supply chain. So such an example is a project by Walmart, and with the help of Hyperledger and IBM, who created this project in which they trace the origin of all the mangoes and pork that came to the Walmart store, and from which farm did this particular mango came from. So what is the impact of that? The impact was that in traditional methods, it required a week's time to track the source of a particular item on the shelf of Walmart, from which farm did it come from. But using a blockchain technology, that same time it reduced to just less than 2.2 seconds. So that is the advantage of using a blockchain. How is it impactful? It leads to selective quarantine, where if some of the products from a particular farm are found to be defective, they can be quarantined and reduce the transaction cost, and there are a lot of advantages of such traceability in daily life. This is just one tip of the iceberg regarding the applications of blockchain. There are a lot of other blockchain applications which are discussed in the course. So you can read more about this in the course. So finally, let us come to the blockchain variants. What are the different variants of blockchain? There are mainly two kinds of variants of blockchain, like permissionless blockchains and permission blockchains. So in permissionless blockchain, it is the public blockchains that we see. Anyone can join the network, anyone can participate in the consensus. There is no need to prove the identity of the participant. So no KYC needs to be provided. And it uses algorithms like proof of work, which is computationally expensive. So that is for Bitcoin's case, but in Ethereum, they are moving towards a less computationally expensive one known as proof of stake or staking. In permission case, there is a restriction on the number of users who have right to validate the block transactions. Like some examples are Paxos, Raft, PBFT. So only approved actors can participate in the consensus. An example of this is Hyperledger. So with that, we come to the end of the introduction to blockchain session. So I hope you have an understanding about the basics of blockchain. So blockchain is something that is decentralized, distributed, and it is functioning with the help of a set of protocol or rules known as consensus mechanisms. And there are a lot of participants in this blockchain network in a public sense. And there are some variants of blockchain like public blockchains and permission blockchains. So public blockchains are, as we mentioned, they are used for transacting among different participants across the world, and they are used for creating applications known as decentralized applications that are a decentralized versions of the centralized applications that we have seen till now. Then we have the permission versions of blockchain, which are more like a distributed ledger technologies like Hyperledger or Corda, which have a restriction on the number of users who are participating in them. So this is just a brief idea regarding blockchain. So If you want to learn much more in detail, you can refer to the course and read the material and then understand the concepts. And if you have queries regarding those concepts, you can post in the discussion board. So thank you everyone for listening in. I hope you all will finish the course by December 31st. Have a nice day. Happy learning.